to build the palm trees on the side of our road, and this is just a single palm tree model, but then using various tools in Cinema 4D, we can make it look like there are a lot more. This is the palm tree model we're going to use for the project. You can go ahead and download this. It is included in the class files. If I click this, you can see that, and this is in the size plus mode in the transform tab down here. It's about 13 meters tall, and put into the scene, you know, its relative scale to the car and everything else. This is the kind of arrangement we are going to end up with. So if you decide to use different assets, for example, maybe you have different types of trees. If you want to have similar scaling to what I have here, make sure that your assets are roughly this height. If they're not, you can just double click, click the object over here, press T for the scaling, and you can either make it larger or smaller. And you can see the size change as you do the scaling. Anyway, for the class, you can just follow along with this and you will end up with the same thing I'm doing. Anyway, since I have the asset already open, I can go to Edit and Copy with it selected there. Go to Window and I will jump back to our main project. Any projects I have open will be listed under the Windows, under the Window section here, down here. So let's go to our project and I will edit and paste. And now this will insert in the center of the scene. Alternatively, I could have stayed in our original project, File and Merge Objects, and locate that palm tree model. So it's right there. Click Open, and it combines the two projects together. This is going to be inside of a cloner. So once again, I will hold the Alt key as I insert the cloner. Let's change the mode from linear to grid array, and we only want 2 in the X direction. Let's make it wider. The actual size here is going to be 1500. For the distance in between, this is in the per step mode. I will set this to 1500 centimeters. If I just zoom out for more of an overview, I can then increase the number of clones until they reach close to the edge of our landscape. I've done these calculations before, so I know that later when we start to line up these landscape sections, this distance that's left over is going to be doubled up when we join it to the next segment. So it ends up being about as wide as what we have between each palm model. Anyway, if nothing else, just use the same numbers I'm using and you'll be fine. Okay, the trees look too uniform right now. We want to randomize their rotation and also height. Before we do that, let's insert a camera just to have reference of where the camera is going to be behind our car. I am looking through the camera and I will set the X position to 0, so it's also in the center of the scene. And let's zero out any rotation values that are there. The Y position is going to be 117 or thereabouts. It's about just above where the car is itself. And then the Z position is going to be negative 550, so about 5 meters away from the center of the car. But you can see it's too close, so I will change the focal length from 36 millimeters, and this is in the object settings of the camera, to 24 millimeters, which gives us a wider view. And this is exactly the angle which I used for the final animation. Things are starting to look a bit too dark with all these segments, so maybe I'll switch back to grow shading with no lines, and I can just see a bit better what's going on. Going back to our trees, let's go to MoGraph Effector and Random, and we can use this to just make our trees look like they are a bit different. You can see it's randomizing the position by default. We want to do this, but not in the Y direction. All the trees should remain planted to the ground, but we can leave X and Z to 50 centimeters. That's fine. We also want to go to the rotation and switch that on. And we have rotation heading, pitch, and banking. So on the heading, we just want to type in 360 degrees. If I were to slowly adjust this value, you can see what it's doing. It's rotating each clone to a random value between 0 and 360. And it just means each tree is going to just be, it's going to appear as if it's pointing a slightly different direction. And then for the height of each palm tree, we're going to use the scale, and we only want to change the Y scale. So if I go and type in, let's say 1, you can see it randomizes it way too much. Some trees end up being too short and then some too tall. So we want to use a much smaller value here. Let's go for 0.25. And in addition, I don't want any trees getting shorter than where I started. I only want to randomize and increase the height at the same time. So I'll make sure that I tick absolute scale. And what that means is it's only going to randomize in the up direction and not make any trees shorter than where I started. So now if I turn the scale on and off, you can see we introduce some subtle height variation. If I perhaps jump out of the camera just to see more of the trees as we back off here. If I go into the random effector, you can see the difference in the height. And then if I turn off the whole effector in itself, you can see we go from perfectly uniform palm trees to something that looks a bit more